Shane, I got an interesting question for you. And since we're both definitely on the skeptical side, I think this will kind of tickle your mental facilities here. So I heard an interesting concept, which was that millionaires don't use astrology, but billionaires do. And I'm wondering if we can have a conversation on that, if there's any veracity to it, and if there is veracity, why that is the case, and is there a more rationalist explanation to why that would be? So,
So
uh,
I have, yeah, I've got two approaches to this, and one is I'm personally kind of spookily impressed with how often good astrology actually is useful. But even if you like dial that back to a completely skeptical and materialistic worldview, there's a really interesting analogy which I always go back to. So there's a tribe of shifting farmers in the Amazon that have to like clear the forest and make little gardens in different locations in the forest. And every year that they're doing this, they have this elaborate culture of omens that tell them where to plant their gardens. And a group of anthropologists went down to like document this like incredibly intricate series of omens that have to be interpreted correctly to put the gardens in the right place, assuming that there would be some kind of like profound ecological knowledge kind of hidden inside all of these signs and things that they were interpreting. And like they were recording all of this for years, and then when they finally analyzed all the data, they said it's crap. Like it's crazy. It's completely it makes no sense. And then they realized what it actually was doing. If you don't have that kind of system, humans tend to fall back on a very limited set of logical reasons for doing things. And when you do that in a highly variable ecosystem like the rainforest, it increases the chance that you're going to put all of your gardens in a place where a flood will wipe them all out, or a drought will wipe them all out, or animals will turn up and wipe them all out. So it was really just a randomizer designed to stop people making the optimum choice under most of the conditions that turns into a disastrous choice occasionally in a variable environment. And I think that might be related to the root behind millionaires and billionaires, that when you become a really big target for exploitation, like a billionaire, if you make the predictable best decision for short-term gain, it makes you exploitable by other parties. Um, it's a little bit like military tactics. Like if there is a always an optimum choice in a military campaign, then your opponent, your adversary, can predict what you're going to do next. So the best choice isn't the best choice if it's predictable and counteractable. And yeah, I think that might be why billionaires are more likely to use something like astrology, because it makes them unpredictable in a way that is confident. You need to just occasionally make a move that nobody saw coming and stick to it, that you don't go halfway through implementing it and then second guess yourself.
hmm. Okay, so that seems like a very interesting naturalistic explanation for why that could be the case. And I'm wondering, another potential factor in this is that astrology and other like systems like that were kind of proto-psychological. And do you think that there might be some aspects to, I guess, the fact that if someone believes that they are acting in accordance with the will of fate or heaven or whatnot, or higher powers or lower powers in some case, that this might give them the psychological confidence to do something and to follow through in a way that others may not have access to.
Yeah, that would be the other aspect, is that often if you want to make a really great fortune, you need to pattern match and tap into intuition on a level that is beyond what other people can do. And that's probably the other thing that astrology is useful for. It's kind of like an ink blot test. It throws up patterns that can either resonate with you and encourage you to double down on like correct intuitions if used well. Or you can see something that just seems like complete nonsense and let it go and move on and spin the wheel of fortune again on that kind of prediction engine.
Hmm.
I wonder as well too, this is the third thing in organizations that astrology can do, is that it gives the final decision maker a disposable layer of avoiding responsibility.
Oh, yes.
So if you're the king and your priest, cuts open a chicken and says we have to go to war on this particular day, and the war's a disaster, like you lose half of your troops,
Hmm.
you burn the priest at the stake, and the king gets to keep his job and say, "Oh, we'll just try another priest." But if you
Hmm.
win, then the king says, "Aren't I a great king? I led us to victory." So that's another thing. When you get to billionaire scale companies, having those layers of explaining away problems can be an advantage as well.
Hmm. Now, do you think they'd be just as good if they used some sort of RNG style, like roll the dice type of
Well, we're about to do this as a civilization with our version of AI. If
mm,
LLMs tell you that this is the ideal investment portfolio or marketing campaign, and it doesn't work, you're just like, oh, I guess we'll try the latest model that's just been updated. I'm sure it's better. So yeah, I think it very much has a technological incarnation. And I mean, there's some people in the kind of paranormal fields who are claiming that LLMs basically function like demons because
mm,
they're not just a set of rules that has a predictable outcome. Like you can put the exact same prompt in multiple times and get significantly different responses. So it kind of functions like a fortune telling machine. Like you have to ultimately take responsibility for what comes out at the end
mm,
if you're going to act on it or not.
that's true. Yeah. So Uh, it's funny you mentioned that because in my worldview, if something exists, then it has done so because it either provided an advantage, was adjacent to something that provided an advantage, or did not provide enough of a disadvantage to be actively selected against, or some combination thereof. And
Mm,
I mean, now that we understand like more of the laws of physics, the idea that giant balls of gas millions of light years away can have a direct effect on the physics of your life is not really feasible. But
mm.
it seems like it might have significant effects on the psychology in terms of Jungian archetypes. But that also begs another question, because if it is real, then how come different astrology systems developed independently with significantly different ideas about what is auspicious or inauspicious or good luck or bad luck or the different types of I guess, archetypes. So, like Chinese astrology has the animals, and Western astrology has the different, well, it has some animals, but also some humans and other symbols in there. So it's like, are they both real, or did they represent, say, significant cultural developments? Or cultural truths that their founders believed in. Where do you like? What's your stance on that?
Well, if you look into the history of where astrological systems come from and how they evolve, they do try to study past real world events and then map those cycles of events onto corresponding time length cycles in the sky. And I think as a proto-science, it's not bad. I mean, it's not that different to agriculture where, when the mulberries burst their buds, that's the time when you plant a particular crop. And that's a simpler system than having a calendar date or a thermometer to make those kind of decisions. So yeah, I think there are a lot of natural, fairly predictable cycles in human civilization and relationships and all those kind of things, and finding a corresponding time interval that's around about the same and mapping that on is probably fairly functional and also durable too. Like if you want to maintain that tradition over long periods of time in a semi-literate society, linking it to the stars is probably a really clever trick. It's right there if people know what to look for over long periods of time. So, oh, and going back to what you were saying about the principles of evolution, that things need to be uh, either useful or not bothersome enough to get rid of. Um, that's assuming that the feedback loop on those traits has been around long enough to have acted. So if you look really carefully in the environment, you'll find new mutations which fail all of those criteria because they just haven't been selected away
Hmm.
yet. So yeah, things can creep in at the margins that seem mysterious, that seem completely, bonkers and unexplainable. And yeah, it's just wait another 1,000 years and
Hmm.
they'll be corrected, but you're just a bit too soon.
Mm. And I'm going to end by asking, as we're both scientifically minded people, but do you think that like those of us who are scientifically minded could gain some advantages by studying and following aspects of these belief systems, even if we don't fundamentally agree with them or think that they are valid in the way that the true believers might see them.
I would link this back to the millionaires versus billionaires ideas, and I would map that onto thinkers and scientists. And if you look at the history of scientists who have made like really spectacular contributions, they're often kind of mystical, weirdo kind of people. Like they often follow dreams and intuitions and things that on the surface look like they make no sense. And for every one person like that that hits it big, there's, like 99 cranks that wasted their entire life obsessed with an idea that was never actually going to work out.
Mhm.
So that's the thing too. Like maybe it's more like a horseshoe kind of graph that you find billionaires believe in astrology, but there's also like really, really poor people who like get scratch tickets and waste all of their money for the same reason, because Venus is in the right house. And it's only occasionally those poor people, their intuition is correct and they're convicted enough to follow it that they make it really, really big. Or you can be completely logical and sensible, and that strategy tops out at getting, millionaire kind of payoffs if you're consistently, rational. So
Mm.
maybe there's a similar thing happening with science that you can either be extremely, you can do coloring inside the lines kind of science where you can make meaningful contributions, but they're just kind of filling in the gaps of the the overarching concepts that are already established. And those new overarching concepts tend to come from the mystical kind of scientists who get an idea in their head, pursue it to the ends of the earth, probably irrationally, but occasionally they hit on something that's actually really new and useful that you could never find by just doing rational, logical, one step in front of you at a time science.
Mm. Very true. And yeah, the world is so much stranger than we give it credit for. But
Mm.
yes, thank you so much for giving your opinion, and I'll see you on the next one.